morning. I swear a lot.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the book club. We're on Impuritas Civitatis now. This might actually be the last of the credenza book entries that we need to check out. We might be able to get them all done today. It kind of looks like we can, because none of them seem to be quite as long as Geb or the Purple Tear or Zhao. So I think we can actually get through this right now, but I need to do it relatively quickly. I don't have a lot of time today, so without further ado, each association has a creed or maxim that reflects its atmosphere. Some emphasize gallant passion, while others aspire to a quiet and cold attitude. The Hana Association is no exception in that it has a number of outwardly seen principles. Coincidentally, they represent the most basic ideas of the attitude a fixer must have. We must exercise concentration and resoluteness in all situations, be diligent to detect the emergence of a new flow, yet be wary not to be swept by the flow yourself. As our occupation involves placing some on low positions and holding others in high regard, we must secure the values that constitutes our frame, while amending outdated parts of our ideologies. Thus, we need to have an open mind that can accept opinions that differ from our own in moderation, be willing to listen to the criticism of others and acknowledge it, but be cautious not to throw yourself into confusion by accepting any and all opinions, changing yourself without due consideration. Change what needs to be changed, but be stubborn about the rules we've maintained. In conclusion, we mustn't fall for temptation or deception. Much like how a foundation influences the structures that stand on it, these principles serve as a basis for all associations to uphold. Being the association that supervises the system of fixers in general, the principles of the Hana are also applicable to the mindset any fixer should have. So the Hana Association really are just kind of like pinnacle fixers, really. It's just like, this is what you should be. This is what you should want to become. This is like the model fixer, as it were. Though it's funny that, the Hana Association has no exception in that it has a number of outwardly seen principles, and coincidentally, they represent the most basic ideas of the attitude a fixer must have. Yes, but who set the precedent of the attitude that a fixer should have? Was it the Hana Association by any chance? If so, how very coincidentally convenient that the morals and values of the Hana Association just happens to be what a fixer should be. Little suspect, maybe. Which came before the other? Did the Hana Association set those ideals and then fixers followed them, or did successful fixers have those morals and ideas, and the Hana Association, upon becoming the association that manages fixers, adopts those policies? It's thoughts, it's things, it could be a thing. Some people ask how stars of the city, the highest level of urban hazards, are any different from impurities. They wonder, aren't they disrupting the city's order? If you ask me, the city as it exists with the stars might be what the head thinks as the ideal image of the city. In the universe that is the city, a center of mass forms for each person who bears a wish for something, and clusters of dreams comparable to interstellar matter gravitate towards those centers. Driven by the force people exert in their efforts to reach those goals, such nebulae repeatedly expand and contract, until they finally fulfill their wishes, creating a star whose glow we can observe. The people who witness the sparkle of that star admire how brilliantly it shines in the dark, and entertain the hope that they will shine as brightly one day, making yet more centers in the universe. Of course, some people have their eyes fixed to the ground, too busy to gaze at anything other than their path ahead. However, once a person sets their eyes on a star, they begin to head towards it, using its guidance like a compass. Although they probably aren't trying to become a star themselves, they merely want to shine with their dreams for once, not to indulge in the sense of superiority that comes from being high up in the city's sky. So it sounds to me like, in terms of classification, a star of the city is a powerful entity that the head is okay with having around, whereas an Impuritas Civitatis is an equally or even stronger entity that the head is basically not okay with having around and wants to get rid of, hence the difference between an impurity and a star. The only difference is how you're perceived by the head, it seems to be. I don't know, but that is interesting. There are 12 fixer associations across the city, and the Hana Association is the one in charge of general management of the rest. We're renowned for rating the threat level of hazards that occur in the city and grading fixers and officers. On top of that, we give out fixer licenses, issue official documents about certain requests, and assign colors to fixers who prove themselves to be beyond the grading system. Our association calls the shots on pretty much everything regarding fixer activity, although there is one thing the Hana Association can't touch on. The ratings of hazards in the city are as follows: urban myth, urban legend, urban plague, urban nightmare, star of the city, and impurity. Most other associations only deal with stars of the city or lower. Even though Hana Association has control over grading the hazards, there's one grade our association can't assign. the impurity. Only the head has the authority to decide that. I don't know the exact rationale behind designating impurities. From what I can see, they seem to declare beings that defile the city as impurities and banish them to the outskirts. I suppose the head manages that part, since things like the ethics of the city aren't subjects we are qualified to discern. So this further reinforces my thought process, really. Star of the city and impurity are near enough the same thing. The only difference is whether or not the head likes you. If you represent something the head doesn't like, if you challenge something that the head has set in place, or if somehow, I don't really know how you could be, but if you were considered a threat to the city or the head, then you would be designated an impurity, and only the head can do that. It actually works quite well with their system, considering that people in positions of power like the Hunter Association, like Ruina, and like the people at the head of that, it's not really their place to discuss the morals and ethics or make those kind of decisions on their own. So the head has to do it. It's a system that works very well for the head, and the head is basically the city, so I guess it kind of works well for the city in general. But yeah, that confirms my suspicion. Good to know. Roland and I were longtime partners in Charles' office since the year dot. There were 12 members in total, excluding Angelica, who joined the office later on to resolve the case of the Blood Red Knight. Consisting of rather few fixers for a Grade 1 office, it took on various requests, playing to the strengths of the 12 members who had different quirks and characteristics each. Roland and I got along well together, so I often worked with him. Well, not exactly for that reason. To be precise, someone had to keep his impulse to jump into action before thinking on a dog's leash. Valor without forethought is little more than a bluff, and there is more strength in discretion than recklessness. I wonder if you remember this piece of advice I gave when you were still prone to take action without thinking. I remember you conceding it and taking a step back. Although I gave you that advice, now I understand that it's not without fault. Thinking alone doesn't make progress, and too much caution can be a harm to oneself. I had the prudence, and you had the unhesitating action. We helped each other with our strengths, and we could just live on by dealing with matters at hand back in the day. Maybe those were the days when we could laugh and lament the most and carry out our lives just like that. But now we've come too far to go back. So did you, and so did Charles's office. So, valor without forethought is little more than a bluff, and there is more strength in discretion than recklessness. It's a really roundabout and fancy way of the popular phrase, discretion is the better part of valor. Like, you could have just said that, Olivia. You didn't have to make it ridiculously overcomplicated, but it is good advice nonetheless. But considering how important Olivia is, especially in Roland's case, it's weird how little we actually know about him, other than that he was one of the 12 fixers, and now he works for Hunter Association. That's kind of it. And that he and Roland used to do jobs together. But, you know, he's not dead anymore, he's back now. So, there could be more with that in the future, and I'd be interested in seeing it for sure. I'd love to get perhaps a sequence where Roland and Olivier team up again, like the good old days, and they go for it. That could be really cool. But sadly, there's just not much to say about Olivier because there's not much information provided. It's more just philosophy and, thought processes rather than actual hard facts. And he provides a good point. Obviously, discretion is a better part of valor. That's a very good point. But sometimes, and weirdly enough, actually, this is seems almost completely irrelevant. I've found that less thinking, more doing is actually very good in certain games, especially when I play survival mode on Fallout 4, where lethality is up across the board, so a couple hits kills anyone, including you. There have been multiple moments where I've been like, okay, I could plan a proper ambush on like a group of raiders or something and like really be careful about it and sneak around and try and pick them off. Or I could literally run to that guy, smack him, shoot that guy, run to the third guy, smack him, and they're all dead. And you know what? That second plan sometimes is the best one. There have been times playing that game where I threw myself into like fights expecting to die because I was like ill or something, or had radiation poisoning and knew I couldn't really come back from it, only to find that I cleared out encounters with no problem because I was so quick and aggressive. I didn't think, I just went. Didn't bother trying to line up a perfect shot, I just shot. I didn't bother thinking about the guy with the machine gun on the left, I just ran at the guy with the rifle and stabbed him. And it worked. Like, sometimes not thinking and just doing is actually much more effective than taking a long time to think about it and plan it. And I'm an improv guy. This does fit with my mindset. Even when I'm playing strategy games, yes, I do like to come up with plans sometimes, but I come up with the foundation of a plan, and I leave it purposefully vague, because that gives you room, as it were, to improvise, to adapt to changing circumstances. If you have a highly complicated and rigid plan, and something happens that you don't expect, you're just not ready for it because you've given yourself tunnel vision in adhering to that original, extremely complex plan, whereas if you keep things simple, you can adapt. It's not a perfect mindset, of course, but it's one that I live by. In many cases. We move on now to the ensemble. Goddamn, we're here. We'll do our Galia last for obvious reasons. The world is one massive aggregation of delusions, a world where individuals can shape their own reality as they see fit. Every person is susceptible to deception, for they have knowledge. For that reason, it is impossible for a pure being, untainted by knowledge, to see the world as we mistakenly observe it. In the same way they cannot discern the endpoint of a line or tell between blue and red. A world devoid of wants, it would be unfit to call that place a world. In fact, to even call it a place would be yet another misconception amongst us knowing ones. The more one learns, the more delusions they invite. However, if most people observed the same place and felt the same sentiments, then it might not be your own delusion after all, wouldn't you say so? For instance, take a look at the blue sky. The celestial dome is higher and farther than one can fathom and as blue as it can be. Most will agree that the sky is tall and blue. Alas, those who think as such are ultimately within your view. It's only natural that they agree with you as their figments born out of your delusional mind. Indeed, the sly entity that prevents you from seeing the world in its sincerest form would be none other than yourself. Even the holy entity in which you believe and to which you devote yourself is going to be a projection of your own self, so how can I trust anything that my eyes show me? So we discussed this during the Reverberation Ensemble reception, in the conversation between Hockmer and Pluto, which was very polite, by the way. I enjoyed their very polite conversation, but I addressed it then. Pluto's philosophy and his views on, funny enough, viewing things, his views on perception, are interesting, and indeed there is logic and, even potentially truth in there somewhere, but it's such a dead-end, pointless, inhibiting mindset. It is so unnecessary, and just everything about this is pointless, where it's like, how can I believe what my eyes see? And it's like, well, that's literally your only means by which to perceive the world. Yeah, it might be wrong, but in the absence of an alternative, there's no point worrying about it. Sure, I could be looking at my monitor right now, and it's not actually my monitor, it's, I don't know, a fish tank on a rock in the middle of the woods where I sit on my stump and shout at the fish tank screen. But I don't know that. I don't know that. From what I perceive, what I can see, what I can smell, taste, hear, and feel right now, and what I'm saying in the context is I'm currently sat at my desk in front of my monitor with a microphone in front of me and my computer running the capture software and audio recording software, while I ignore the 9 pings I've gotten on Discord. That's my perception of reality right now, because that's where I perceive myself to be, that's where I am, that's what I can see. Is it wrong? Maybe, but I don't know that. There might not be 3,500 people following this channel right now. The channel might not even exist, but I don't know that. I can't perceive that. That's not my reality, so I can't worry about it potentially not being the case, and I can't trust my own eyes because I have no context for anything else. If everything was to change, if I was to suddenly, quote-unquote, wake up, and then that all wasn't there, okay, yes, now's the time to address reality, because that has become reality, but for now, or presumably, this is reality, and there's no other way to perceive the situation than that. It's pointless to try and consider or prepare for something that you could never possibly consider properly nor prepare for sufficiently, and you can't do anything about anyway. It's like trying to think up a way to prevent the heat death of the universe. What's the point? It's gonna happen and you can't change it. There's no point worrying about it, because it will happen. And to be blunt, it'll happen when we're all dead anyway, so don't worry about it. More pressing things to worry about, like lunch. Lunch is something that should take up most of your mind at any given time. Blood fiends, the beings said to have been punished with never-ending thirst for the sin of lusting after human blood. That's what your kind called us, condemning us out of fear. I was afraid as well when I faced them for the first time in that mansion where everything began. Violent beings who drank the blood of fellow humans, a growing feeling of unease about the possibility of being their next target. The people in the mansion were terrified of those who became monsters. Even though they were humans like us, they were outside of what we thought is the norm. In hindsight, though, it was such a silly thing to do. What is the illusion of normalcy that we feared for and fought for so strongly? Let's say every human on the planet except for one turned into blood fiends, and that single person remaining is left normal, as they say. In that case, what would normalcy be like there? How must a lone human feel being the monster among the creatures they dreaded? Should they fight to their last breath for the humanity they kept for so long? Perhaps that's become an obsolete ideology, one that's no longer worth keeping. What if rejecting that old ideal and becoming a blood fiend opened up our potential for growth in numerous aspects? Your kind likes to claim that something is out of the ordinary when it's only different from what you've seen and experienced before, so you fear it and try to exclude it from your herd. But you see, there's no real justification for your kind to condemn us. There are two problems with what Elena has said here. Two that I can think of right now. First of all, let's address this. Every human on the planet except for one is turned into a blood fiend. That last remaining person is a quote-unquote normal human. How must the whole lone human feel being the monster among the creatures they dreaded? That's not quite how that works. When it comes to the perception of a creature or a person or a type, I guess in this context, as being a monster, it implies some form of threat and or predatory instinct. Even if most blood fiends do not require killing humans to drain their blood, like they can take blood without killing the human, it's still on the very foundational aspect of it requires a blood fiend to prey upon a human. They are required to drink the blood of a human. They are required to prey upon a human. The human is the prey in this circumstance, and the blood fiend is the predator, and that's where the label of a monster would come from, because you would attack us for our blood. If there was one human left on the planet and everyone else was a blood fiend, they would not be the monster, they would be prey. And pretty soon, they would be extinct, because they would not last on their own. Also, all the blood fiends would die because there'd be no human blood. I assume blood fiends can't drink each other's blood, or their own blood, because that would kind of render the whole moral situation moot. So, I get what you're saying in terms of normalcy. In terms of normalcy, yes, that makes sense. If everyone was a blood fiend except for one human, then blood fiends would become the norm. That is 100% logical, and yeah. This makes sense in terms of normalcy, but in terms of the monster justification, no, I'm afraid it doesn't quite work that way. Second of all, everything that comes out of Elena's mouth is fucking bullshit, because she is the only blood fiend, or at least one of the few blood fiends, who actually kills people and attacks them, and, eating veins is completely unnecessary to blood fiends. I don't know what the source is, but someone has mentioned it to me at some point. I assume it comes from the supplementary material, but I don't know because I haven't read it. That plenty of blood fiends, can just drink blood without killing people. They don't turn other people into blood fiends, as far as I can tell. And don't need to kill people to do it. And Elena does it because she's fucking mental, and kind of ruins it for the rest of the blood fiends, because now all the other... Well, she's one of the ones who does this. I'm sure there are other blood fiends who are also murderers and stuff. But it's thanks to blood fiends like her that the entire race is tarred with the brush of being like monsters and predators and all that shit. So, Elena, out of the entire Reverberation ensemble, your moral and philosophical standpoints that you pose are probably the weakest, much like your boss fight in which you are truly pathetic. The Vermilion Cross was the real, actual aspect of that boss fight. Even in the, big, distorted ensemble fight, Elena was pretty pointless. So, yeah, good job, Elena. That's a real shame that the Blood Red Knight ended up being something of a absolute pointless entity within the ensemble. You would think it'd be Philip. You'd think Philip would be the most pointless one, but no. Nah, it's Elena. Which is sad. Oh well. Had I been busy with an urgent appointment, as any other tragic tale should go, your death wouldn't have felt so miserable. Yeah, I would have cried until my tears had run their course, and I would have been ready to send you off. It was an ordinary day, the sort of day when there were no meetings or gatherings to attend to after I came home from work. Your body was crushed beyond recognition. I couldn't have noticed on my own that it wasn't a random chunk of flesh. They put your remains in a stasis box and sent it to me. That was their gesture of condolence. I'd have refused to believe it was you if it weren't for the clothes. I spent hours sitting there in numbed silence, vacantly staring at a lump I couldn't even dare to hug. A stuffed doll you were carrying, now next to the box, caught my eye. Even though it was shredded and soaked in blood, the cotton filling was clustered together, as if it remembered the volume of the doll. It seems some cotton remained even after the roller crumpled all the outer fabric. Then, for reasons unknown, I brought the other dolls out of your room and cut them up with a pair of scissors. I don't know what possessed me to cut them into pieces of fabric. There wasn't even enough to fully cover the doll, so I scraped together the pieces of clothing to sew it back up, with the same gentle hands that made your doll the first time. The outcome was creepier than what it used to be, but it was the same doll I remembered nonetheless. The appearance didn't matter. Maybe, just maybe, the same could be said for you. I gazed at the box where you, my son, rested for what would no longer be an eternity. My two hands were once so busy that it was a bother. They had paused for the time, but now they are about to move again, just for you. Yehon's is tragic. It is horrifically tragic. This is one of the worst things ever. It's awful. A steamroller. A steamroller. A fucking steamroller. They had to try really hard. I bet the writing team were like sat around a table, right? You know, multiple empty cups of coffee, ashtrays filled with stubbed out cigarettes, shirt sleeves rolled up, ties loosened, head in hand, like, we have established one of the most potent medical systems in any work of fiction, where entire limbs can be reattached to people, a severed head can be reattached to a body. How are we going to set up a situation where someone takes enough damage that they are simply unrevivable without being, you know, fought in the library? Now, the easy solution, to be honest, would have been Yehon's kid was hit by a car and Yehon couldn't afford to get them treatment. That would have very easily led to the same conclusion and led to Yehon's disdain for the rich. But it wouldn't have made sense with his puppeteer gimmick in which he needs to stitch something together. Putting all that together, they were like, well, it's obvious his child has to be run over with a steamroller. And everyone's like, how the fuck did he get run over by a steamroller? They're really fucking slow. And I'm like, guys, I don't think you quite realize how dumb kids are. They're really dumb. They're very dumb. It's actually quite feasible. They are extremely dumb. It's why they're children. But honestly, if you had kids in the city, would you ever leave them unattended? Ever? It's the city. There are sweepers and syndicates. And random fights going on in random streets with guns and swords and bionically and mechanically enhanced limbs. And like, no, Yehon, you should have kept an eye on your kid all the goddamn time. Bring him to work with you, whatever. I'm impressed that he had the balls to make a puppet version of Angelica, though. That was a statement. That was certainly a statement. Fighting for survival is a natural thing. Even now, we're all in battle. There are more people born than folks dying of natural causes, and the living struggle in their own positions every day. A fight to protect and to avoid falling behind. Maybe it's all because there's just ain't enough seats for the ever-growing population of humans to take. Sure, extra jobs and stuff could be made in the future, but that's nothing more than a hopeful estimate that might not happen until it's too late for you. The world we live in right now is what matters. There's got to be a way to weed out the unfit without straining all of us, and that's when strength plays its part. I don't get why you vilify this. Aren't we all doing the same thing, directly or not? We elbow our way past others so we can survive, and the losers are knocked out of the race. You say this is fair, but say no to physical conflicts, to respect life or whatevs. Then let me ask, what's the reason to respect life? Do you think you're respecting life right now? It's the issue with Tanya, and this is something I've noticed a lot with characters who display similar views in many other forms of fiction. It's the might makes right, strength is power. If you're strong, then you're, you know, you deserve to be up top and all that. And it all makes sense. There's a logic to it, certainly. But the problem is, this mentality always comes from strong people. Of course they are supporting a mentality that reflects their own position and their own capabilities. What if we flipped the script on this and said, only those who are the best at playing the fiddle deserve to be in higher positions in the world? I don't think Tanya would agree with that, because she's probably not very good at playing the fiddle, but she is very strong, hence why she agrees with the mindset that might makes right and strength is everything. Now, yes, when she loses to Geb, she's like, yep, that's fair, alright, I lost. So Tanya does accept this with grace, and she does believe it. But she believes it because she's already quite powerful herself. I personally think if you took all of her strength away and gave her a month or two, she would probably change her mind because she would realize how fucking hopeless it is. You know, it's the classic case of put yourself in someone else's shoes before you make such strong statements. It'd be easy for me to say, I don't know, let's see, I have, like, maybe this is a bit hot button, but there's a reason why I'm bringing it up. If I was to sit here and say, well, I haven't got any disabilities, I've got all my limbs, so it would be easy for me to sit here and say shit or propose stuff that is either dismissive of people with disabilities or outright condemning and stuff. Now, luckily, I don't need to go through this experience, but if I did then, say, lose a leg or, you know, damage my spine or whatever and lose the ability to use certain limbs, and lived with that for a month or two, or even longer, because unfortunately most disabilities are fairly permanent, I imagine my viewpoint would change quite dramatically. Yeah, once you're able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, suddenly things start to make a lot more sense. So don't buy it, Tanya, I'm sorry, I think thinking's not your strong suit. Stick to the beatdowns. Stick to the beatdowns, yes. People have hopes and dreams. I want to eat 3 blossoms of flowers. I want to be a swifty, nifty, thrifty kitty. I want to earn a fortune. And then they add, maybe I'll find delicious flowers someday. Maybe I'll get fat stacks of cash in my paws someday. Maybe I'll be showered in the loudest applause someday. Someday, someday, someday. That dastardly someday just won't stop popping up. But to have a hope, you've got to prepare incense to offer those wishful prayers upon. A world where one can't eat flowers. A reminder that you're a sluggish turtle right now. The beggarly reality. Setting the stage for the performance we call hope. Thus, and therefore, people have the wrong idea about how to have hopes. If they believe that the hopes will come true someday, they'll just keep parroting that contemptible word. The day will never actually come. Having expectations this way will only leave you with bitter anger. I'll change someday? That person will turn over a new leaf someday if I count on them and wait? Nah. People entertain the hopes as they please, and then bite at each other when the change they expected doesn't happen. Clowns can't give out smiles in a world full of mean, teary friends. So we should all do the stretches starting today. Abandon all expectation. Just keep a merry, positive attitude and laugh no matter what you see. Let's make a performance about what's already come true, not of a supposed reality you hope for someday. I'm already on the stage, standing under the brightest spotlight ever. Now, the expectations for other people is a tricky one, and it's one that I didn't really have a solid answer for in the series, and I don't really think I have a solid answer for now. Because on the one hand, there are the basic expectations that you have for the people around you. Like, you know, in regards to, like, my friends, for instance, I would expect them to not immediately start doing hard drugs and drinking themselves to death. Is that an unrealistic expectation? Maybe. I guess it would vary depending on the individual. In their case, I wouldn't say it's unrealistic at all because they are not inclined towards such things. But in regards to someone who does take hard drugs or drinks excessively, what would your expectation be then? Do you set the expectation that they'll change their ways? Like if they say to you, oh yeah, don't worry, I'll stop, and then you hold on to that expectation? Is that reasonable? Is that unreasonable? Is that the right way to go about it? I don't fucking know. I can offer opinions and thoughts on things all day, but I don't know what the right response is there. I don't know what the right expectation is to have on the people around you. I actually just don't know. I really don't have an answer for it. I don't even know how to analyze my thoughts and feelings towards the people around me as is. I don't even know how I describe it other than, I don't know, I like you, and I hope you do well, and I'm here for you. That's all I've got. That is kind of the extent of it. There's no, like, I expect you to do this, I expect you to do that. I don't expect anyone to do anything other than what they've told me they're going to do, and if they don't do it, then I guess that colors my expectations for the future. But I wouldn't consider that to be an unnecessary or unrealistic expectation, because they set that expectation. I didn't decide I was going to expect that from them. They presented it to me, and I accepted it because I trusted them. I don't think that's necessarily me setting an expectation on them, as much as they would have given me that expectation of them. It's a weird one, I don't know. Is the Bremen's page even gonna have words? Oh yeah, it is. Let's go on an adventure, a world that changes with every step, the me that changes after every step I take, my eyes dazzled by colourful light. I pursue pleasures that I don't have. Don't scold us because you can't understand our pursuit. You just happen to be one of the many who feel joy from common things. We, on the other hand, don't see any colours in those. You're the ones drenched in nasty pleasures. We're simply looking for what we lack. But complete satisfaction will never come. It'll only sink deeper in the raging thirst. We'll spend our days in yet grander debauchery. We're happy though. We can wet ourselves in new new colors every day, unlike the rest of you. So basically just the understimulated wizard from Inscription. You just need newer and grander forms of stimulation. You do well in the Slanesh. You do well working for Slanesh, I'm sure. The funny thing is I guess I am very much diametrically opposed to Bremen in a sense, because I live my life quite plainly. I enjoy fairly dull but comfortable lifestyle, you know, like, I guess my variety comes from the channel, funnily enough, from playing loads of different kinds of video games, like trying out new series and stuff like that, and I get to experience all these new and different colors, as it were, new and different worlds and all that, and that's where all my desire for variety goes, I suppose. And then the rest of the aspects of my life really are just relax, kick back, enjoy comfort, be happy, continue building things in Terraria in your spare time, that kind of thing. I can understand it, but me and Bremen are probably quite diametrically opposed. In many ways. It's an era where humans are dominated by the act of consumption. When you're hungry, you get annoyed, and when starvation touches your raw nerve, you turn violent. That's how humans are, and people who eat the same food will naturally grow similar. So the high and mighty beings that want to rule over you demand you to eat the correct stuff. When something's correct, there's got to be something that's incorrect. Incorrect food. It's got to mean humans eating humans, don't you think? Why do people think that eating is natural, but then draw the line at eating their fellow man? Who decided it's so, and why? Is it because human life is precious? That's a flawed statement. What makes the lives of animals less precious? We're not about to go down a boring philosophical riddle about the weight of life now. If humans clearly have more value over animals because we're the apex predators, then there shouldn't be any problem with a pack of humans that rise above the rest and prey on others. We've got two options. First, don't eat anything. Hey, I'm not suggesting that we all starve to death. Your body is taught to eat. So what if you changed that habit? Maybe instead of food, your empty innards could be filled with possibilities of some other kind. If you ain't a fan of that, then there's the second option. Eat anything. Just trace the smell of blood and stuff, what you find, in your mouth as your brain tells you to. See, Greta has some logic to her. Truly she does, where it's like, I can see the even as a vegetarian, funny enough, I can see the logic behind, like, well, what makes eating a human so different, you know, philosophically, just eat whatever, I guess. Now, there are multiple reasons why you shouldn't eat a human. There is the moral aspect to it, but there's also the fact that you will, I don't know exactly what it is, but there are diseases and mental illnesses that come from cannibalizing people, so that's really not a good idea. But the biggest problem I have with Greta is that a lot of her justification regards, like, at least I remember in the reception, regards, like, food to go around, you know what I mean? Like, people are starving, and we could be eating each other, like, and some people eat too much, some people eat not enough, like, why don't we just, there are solutions, why don't we just eat the right people? She wants people to eat correctly so that they make the best dishes. But one of her biggest justifications was the fact that there's not enough food to go around, but she's a gourmet chef. And gourmet chefs are the absolute antithesis of the idea of having enough food to go around. Gourmet chefs, and don't get me wrong, I'm not shitting on gourmet chefs here, right? It's a respectable career and you guys do some good work. But in terms of, like, efficiency when it comes to food, gourmet chefs are about as far away from efficient as you can get. Small portions of high quality that waste a lot of product. Gourmet chefs are the antithesis of enough to go around, of spreading the food out. So I'm not sure I buy it, Greta. I'm not sure I do. And I won't eat at your restaurant because, ew. Also, I found out during my series that apparently this is a fetish, and that's upsetting. Where we live, there is nothing that can be achieved with your own will. A flow that we cannot go against dictates us. What we call gears are simply there to show the flow. You can't see it with your eyes, and nobody knows who created this massive current or why we must follow it. This flow never leads us to bad places, however. Rather, thinking that such a place exists is an act of defiance in itself. We merely watch events unfold as bystanders. You walk along a path, but was it you who laid the path there? You didn't teach yourself to lift your legs to propel you forward, they simply moved. Furthermore, the decision to walk wasn't our own either. Still too many believe that they moved their legs out of their own volition. It's a shame to see them struggle to escape the flow, for they're only straying away from salvation. So I honestly found Eileen to be one of the least interesting members of the ensemble. Truly, truly, truly not interesting. I don't know what specifically about her, but she never said anything particularly interesting or insightful or notable. She doesn't really do anything. except to be an extremely pain-in-the-ass fight in the ensemble reception. That was a really tough... That was probably the toughest fight in the ensemble reception, actually, was old Eileen. Closely followed or matched by Greta. But the funny thing is, Eileen's philosophy in the Church of Gears, much like, well, actually much more than Bremen, much more than Bremen, diametrically opposes my own views. Because I am a person, I've talked to you guys many times before about how stubborn I am. I can be very fucking stubborn. I can be extremely stubborn. My stubbornness never shines brighter than when someone tries to get me to do something I don't want to do. Or when I feel like I'm being railroaded and I feel like I don't have a choice. If I feel like I don't have a choice, I will rebel against that so fucking hard. And like I've said before, sometimes to my own detriment as well. If everyone's like, you really should do this thing, it's the right thing to do, if I feel pressured to do it, I won't. Or I'll do my best to not do it. Because it's something intrinsic where I don't like being railroaded, I don't like being pressured, I don't like being pushed. I don't like being told what to do with no room for dialogue and negotiation, just you have to do this, and I'm like, no, I don't want to. And because I don't want to, I won't. To the detriment of myself and everyone around me. It's something that over the years I have attempted to be a bit more logical about it, where it's like, even if it is happening, if I'm like, okay, well, this is just the best option, really, isn't it? This is the logical thing to do, to just go along with this. This does make sense. Then I'll push myself to do it. But especially when it comes to the channel, when people try telling me what to do, right? Like, I don't mind suggestions when people are like, oh, I'd love to see you do this, I'd love to see you do that, oh, I'd like to see this, I'd like to see that. That's fine. But when people are like, you should do this, why aren't you doing this yet? I'm like, well, you've just pushed it back another 2 weeks, mate, because now I'm not doing it. Or if they keep on at me about it, I'll be like, well, now I'm not doing it at all. I would have done an Ultra Kill video much earlier if everyone did not get on my case about playing it. It was never like a bad feelings about it, but every time they bugged me about it, I was like, well, now I'm less inclined to play it, which is a shame, because since playing Ultra Kill, that game is awesome, and I love it. It's brilliant. I remember in, like, I think Star in the City Part 1, someone was like, so you're doing Limbus Company next year? And I was like, bruv, we're on Part 1 of Star of the City. We're not even done with Book Club yet. And we still got to do some more decks. And there are other things I want to check out first. And Limbus Company is a live service game. I'd rather wait a little bit before just jumping into it. It won't be, honestly, it probably won't be that long before I do a Limbus Company video, but you know, I'm doing it as and when I feel like it. I'm not rushing to get into it like I was with Ruina, because Ruina was something special. But as much as this sounds like I'm going off on a tangent, this all lends itself back to the flow that we cannot go against dictates us. I just can't follow that. I could never follow that. If she tried preaching to me, they're like, oh, you just gotta slot yourself in and take your place in the thing. I'd be like, no, fuck off. I'm not doing it. Fuck you. And that's why I don't like Eileen, amongst her also just being incredibly boring. How much longer must I walk until I reach an end? How tightly must I shut my eyes, cover my ears, and zip my mouth to keep what's around me safe before I can feel a semblance of happiness that won't leave me? I thought I had to overcome this pain and rise above it to become a tougher man. That way, I wouldn't lose those that are close to me. However, a human is fragile by nature. If one is too weak, they would crumble, and if one is too hardy, they would snap. I realize that there's little I can do to calm the disorder of the world. How can I live on without falling to despair then? A mind that is willing to let go of things that were destined to leave at some point, a mind that is content to have nothing, I feel that it's important to refrain from thinking about that anything is in my possession. I followed your troop in order to find a way to be happy, but what good did it do me? Staying with you only exacerbated my suffering, defeating the whole purpose of joining you in the first place. I do want to add that you were not at fault here, though. I was the one who tormented myself. Had I known what I know now, back in the past, would that have lessened the pain or changed anything? No. I don't blame myself for the choice in that moment. Even the failures and misery of the past were all part of the voyage leading up to this moment. So I'm thankful that I managed to achieve something for once. I might have drowned in my own tears and sorrow back then, but ultimately I'm grateful for the choice I made, and all the things in the world. Philip is a weird one, especially now, especially post the distortion. Is he happy with this? Is he not happy with this? Is he just middle? Is his entire emotional range just mid? Can't really feel anything? Can't really experience anything. He set himself up like, you know, shut eyes, cover ears, zip mouth and all that, but he still sees, hears, and talks to people. So, there's theming here, but there's no actual... It's not actually happened. Philip has done none of those things. Maybe he's shut his eyes and navigates through sound or through that stick. I don't know, but he definitely still talks and he definitely still hears things. I feel like the whole shut my eyes, cover my ears, and zip my mouth thing is a concept they came up with before actually going with the character and then figuring out what they were going to be like, and then they were like, well, we can get the symbolism down, and they've done a great job with the symbolism. Incidentally, this is very well done. This. Very nice. But they were kind of like, well, how can we make that a thing with the character itself? Just make him depressed, I guess? Like, I'm not really blaming them for that. I'm not really sure how I'd do this either. Like, how would you actually make this a thing that this character is? Have what they wanted to do be the core of their being when they distort, without making them completely uninteresting, because how can you have dialogue with a character who shuts their eyes, covers their ears, and zips their mouth? They can't talk, they can't hear, they can't see. How could that fight as well? I can't fight either. So I understand it from that perspective. But yeah, awkward. Philip's a sad story, but yeah, no, he is actually dead. Yeah. Everyone here is actually dead. I remember now, yes. I keep getting used to being like, oh, well, now this person's alive again, but these guys are fucking gone. Straight up. When I heard the news and rushed to the scene, only a hideous musician who had concluded his performance and permanently shut the piano's lid with his torso awaited me. For the first time, emotions I couldn't understand welled up inside me. It's hard to define what they were, even now. It felt as if deep, tenebrous stains were seeping out of my heart. Alas, I didn't shed tears before that piano where your body rested, for I soon realized that you were no longer there. That's right, you're the gentle breeze that brushes past my face and the clouds that fly in the sky, which give me heed of your presence from overhead or underfoot. I thought you had left me, but you would always come back. That's why I care no longer about the skin and flesh you wore only momentarily. Angelica, I'll follow after the name you gave me, Uberto. You used to call me that down in those horrible underground chambers. I'll create a new world, one where people can live bountiful lives even if they have nothing. Free from obsession or greed. When we lose the fixation on our bodies, we won't be afraid of death anymore. No rest will be eternal. Uberto. What? That sounds like I should know what it is, but I don't. This gives a bit more insight into what Argalia actually wanted to do. He just wanted to turn everyone into, like, what, spirits? Entities? Just get rid of, you know, have everyone's body, spirits leave their body, as it were. No more flesh, no more material needs, no more greed and all that. And everyone can just exist happily. That sounds like it just kills people, because as much as he believes that Angelica is on the wind and in the sky and in the clouds and all that, she is dead. She is quite dead. She is in fact dead. And it sounds like your little plan with your flare-cut trousers, Jesus Christ, buddy, that looks terrible, would have pretty much led to everyone else's death. And your own. He truly was fucking mental, wasn't he? Blue sicko. Now he serves as my flinks in Terraria. It's very funny, actually. It's extremely amusing to me. Argalia. Interesting character, cool guy, terrible fucking plan, like the worst plan. What an awful, poorly thought out, poorly justified plan. And his only argument to defend it is like, no, you don't know, but I do know, when he doesn't actually know. He actually doesn't know shit about it. He's just assuming and guessing. He has no fucking clue what the outcome is going to be if he manages to get the lie. He has no idea. No fucking clue. There is no way he could know, even with the help of the Purple Tear, and I'm not sure the Purple Tear would have told him the truth. I think the Purple Tear would have fed him what she wanted him to know, so that Argalia would go through with all of these acts, so that things could play out the way she wanted them to. That's at least my assumption. But he didn't know shit about what was going to happen if he got his hands on the light. He is an absolute fucking moron. An extreme badass. Extremely powerful. I love me a scythe. Scythe is a fantastic weapon. It's very cool. He fights very well. He's very intimidating. He's got away with people. He's great. He's a fantastic villain with one of the worst plans ever. God damn, Argalia, you could have done so much more. Then you screamed like an amateur at the end. Alright, well that's all I've got time for today, ladies and gentlemen. next time on the book club, we will be checking out the alternate endings, and then we'll be checking out the art book. I don't know how long that's going to take, but I'm going to go through the art book, have a little gander in it, see what we can find. I can't imagine the alternate endings will take very long, so most of the next episode will probably be art book. And then that will be the end of the Library of Ruina book club. Hard to believe we're actually reaching the end. I never thought we'd get there, purely because I just couldn't bring myself to record this too often, because sitting here reading for an hour is honestly quite boring. I prefer playing video games. I like playing video games. But sometimes when I'm in the right mood, I do really enjoy doing these book clubs, and I know some of you guys really do enjoy them, and those two factors, mainly the fact that you guys seem to enjoy them, did push me to actually go ahead with it. So, we're nearly there. We're nearly at the end. That'll be next time, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. Or listening, I suppose. Special thanks to Beep, Adash Sanjeev, Alkir, Honeydew Corporation, Sweet Baby Red, MB Alias, Lord Scullington, Jessica T, Plutonium Pie, Dreamer Ghost, Leper Lullaby, K-Bub, Magical, The Frostbite, Monsoon, World, Jumping with Joy, Warmaster Oku, SCP-106A, Namad, and Kenny T800 for supporting me on Patreon. Thank you so much, guys, and thank you all so much for watching. Still hard to believe we're near the end. Pretty soon, actually I was about to say pretty soon I won't have any reason to boot up Ruina anymore, but of course the deck submissions, we still have tons of those to do, and I am eager to do some more of those. There will be more deck submissions, it's just trying to fit in 2 different kinds of Ruina video alongside my schedule of everything else has proven quite tricky at the moment, and I'm trying. Every time I put up a video, I'm like, oh, I should have put up something from this series because it's kind of being left to rot at the moment, and then I put up that video, and then I'm like, oh, I really should have done this because this is now rotting, and it's just a constant stream of feeling like I'm leaving things to rot, and this is what happens when I do too much stuff at one go. It's not good, it's not smart, but I just can't help myself, and I always do it. But that will resolve itself eventually, or it won't. Who cares? Thank you so much for watching. Whatever happens next time, and it will be the alternate endings and the art book, and that will be the finale of the book club for Library of Ruina, and I hope I see you there. Doodles, goodbye.